Point Community Schools Board of Education, September 9th at 6:33. Please call the roll.
Ms. Rayford. Here. Ms. Richardson.
Present.
Mr. Roscoe.
Here.
Mr. Greenberg.
Here.
Dr. Early's here. Mrs. Greenberg not here, and Mr. Williams not here. Absent.
You could all please stand for the pledge. Dan will lead us. Nice to see you back, Dan.
You're welcome. Thanks. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
Place forth a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Is there support? I'll support. I support. Please call the vote.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Ms. Greenberg.
Yes.
Mrs. Rayford.
No.
Ms. Richardson.
Yes.
And Dr. Early, yes.
Okay, next, do we have a motion for consent agenda?
Place forth a motion to approve the consent agenda in its written form.
I'll support you.
Please call the vote.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Dr. Early, yes. Ms. Richardson.
Yes.
Ms. Rayford.
No.
And Mr. Greenberg.
Yes. Next, we have superintendent's report. Superintendent Gibson.
Good evening, board members and those of you joining us online and in the audience. This is your superintendent's report this evening, and I will be asking at the conclusion, Mr. Carlesso to come over and teach the board and the community a little bit more about where we're at with our 2023 bond. And then the technology team, Communications by Design, and Danny Latham will come up and give us an update on our 10-year plan for sustained technology improvements across the district. So that being said, we'll get started. We'll continue on our campaign for excellence this year. And at our back to school event with staff, we asked the staff, what does excellence look like? And so this is a word cloud that represents all the different feedback that we collected from our staff about what our staff thinks excellence looks like. And if you know how word clouds work, it's an algorithm that picks up the words that hit the most, and those words are the largest or the boldest. And so kids or students and learning, along with engagement, excellence, success, care, those were all the words that emerged when we asked our staff about what excellence looks like. Excellence also looks like our soccer team with a win over Hazel Park 4-2. Congratulations to East Point High School soccer. Unfortunately, our game this evening got canceled due to a number of injuries, but we are excited about that opening win. Our enrollment is continuing. Schools of Choice enrollment did close on Friday the 6th, but East Point community residents can continue to enroll their students. Our offices have been very busy with new registrations these past few weeks, and have continued as this week begins. While it may take a few more weeks for our enrollment numbers to settle, East Point Community Schools has an increase already at our elementary schools. Calculated over across 4 elementary schools, we have about an 8% increase in student attendance or enrollment this week. So we again encourage you, if you haven't enrolled your children, please do so. We have a great problem happening where we have to buy some furniture, and we have to hire a few extra teachers because we have so many kids coming to East Point Community Schools. Our MDE partnership continues, and our first benchmark is approaching. Our 18-month check-in with the MDE is coming up. It is scheduled for November, but our team has been involved in looking at our benchmark goals, examining both our state assessment data as well as our local assessment data for increases in both growth and proficiency. So I'd like to report out that based on our full academic year students, we are exceeding the minimum requirement for our 18-month of 1% improvement. If you look here at the difference between our full academic year students in 2022 with those in 2024, we are still not where we would like to be, but the growth is 4% for Pleasant View in math, over 7% in ELA, and over 10% improvement for our high school. When we look at our local assessment data, East Point Community Schools is using NWEA to monitor our local assessment data. We see that Pleasant View Elementary School has a 6.7% growth in math, a 19.8% growth in reading, and a 12.1% growth at East Point High School in reading. So we've been doing work on portraits of a graduate, portraits of an adult, portraits of a system. The next work is the portrait of the parent. And this past week, a survey was sent out. If you are connected online or in the audience, you can take a picture of this QR code, which will take you to the portrait of a parent survey questions. Not all of us are parents currently, some are past, but what we wanted to know about was, what do our current parents think improves student outcomes the most? And so we are pleasantly surprised by the volume and number of parents that have already completed this survey. And so far, some themes are emerging in a portrait of a parent. And so this question of, what do you think is the most important role a parent or guardian plays in helping their child succeed in school? And our parents felt strongly that being supportive, working on communication, those were big areas where they can show up in the lives of their children. Some of the sample responses, and these are from our families talking about what it's like to be a parent now. And so one says, being present, asking questions, getting them help, being there consistently for your child, their belief that home is the foundation and that homes should be a safe place. So our parents are really impressing us with their survey results as it pertains to the portrait of the parent. So that work will continue. What we hope to do with the portrait of the parent is also use it as our Title I Parent Compact. We are school-wide Title I schools in all of our schools except for our high school. And that the Title I federal requirements necessitate a parent compact. So this portrait will serve in that dual function. And we're proud to be engaging with our families as we create it. Board member Mary Hall Rayford has been helping, participating with Caitlin Keenitz, marketing and communications, and Donna Fabian Grossman, and helping to prepare this body of work. And lastly, with the why, I wanted to share you why our staff enjoy coming and being in service to students in our community. And they love the difference that they make, learning, helping children, and that they have a love for the future. Upcoming events. September 13th, we have a home football game versus Southlake at 7 p.m. Our next school board meeting is September 23rd at 6:30 p.m. back here. September 30th will be no school for students. It will be a staff professional learning day. Fall sports competitions are underway. Please check our website for a full athletic schedule. Mr. Carlesso, I'll invite you over to the podium to share a little bit more about the bond project and where we are at in that process.
Good evening. Just get a general overview of the bond and where we spent our money, where we intend to spend our money in the next year or so. So back in August of 2023, our voters approved a $34.6 million bond. We drew against that bond, or we sold bonds in the first series in February 2024 of just under $20 million. And we're using that money right now for our current projects. And that leaves $14.6 million remaining for our next issue or issuances of bonds. The 2024 projects underway are mechanical improvements like unit ventilators, air conditioning, rooftop units. At Bellevue, Crescentwood, and Forest Park, that price tag is $8.2 million. We have some classroom renovations, the exterior walls of those schools, the casework around the unit ventilators, and then the interior wall, like the cubbies at Pleasant View Elementary. That's what that casework is about. Site improvements, Forest Park drainage. In the past, we had huge puddles that were up against the building, and the water was seeping into the building, and going under the building, lifting the floor tile in certain sections, so we got that addressed. And we also resurfaced the parking lot. In preparation for a lot of this work, we had to get it abated by an environmental contractor, and they checked for asbestos and removed any asbestos that was there before the work could begin. So that's the $121,000. A couple weeks ago, the board approved the high school swimming pool renovation. Approximately $700,000 of that total renovation cost is going to be coming out of the bond. And then our construction management and architectural fees are a percentage of the bid work that goes out. So that's estimated at $1.8 million. So the current projects underway is $14.8 million. In 2025, we have about $5 million left in the bond from this first $20 million. So we have a couple options. These are the kind of the projects that still need to be done. And so what we'll be doing is probably narrowing this list down and trying to fit this under $5 million. Otherwise, we'd have to go out and get another bond issue. So when the planning was done for this bond, in order to advertise a zero tax rate increase or no increase in taxes, we had to limit our spending for the first 2 years to $20 million. So anything after that any amount above that would increase taxes. So that's why we're going to probably wait to get that next series of bonds till after the summer of 2025 work is done. There's a little bit of way around it, like we could probably go for like a $2 million bond or so. And they call it capitalizing interest, when basically the interest is rolled into the principal, and it does that. I'm not sure if that's a good idea at this point until we get like what the plans for the high school and middle school done. I'd rather see that done before we go out and get that next series of bonds. But that's still open for discussion. We've got some time on that. So these are some of the projects for the future. The rest of the mechanical improvements for Pleasant View, which would be the air conditioning unit ventilators in the rooftop units. Drainage and parking lots at Bellevue and Crescentwood. Playground renovations at two of the buildings is $796,000. And exterior renovations such as tuck pointing, caulking around the windows. Some of the buildings got this facade on it that's kind of peeling off, where they had windows there in the past and covered them up back in the 70s. And then a roof replacement at Forest Park still needs to be done. There's one more slide for 2025. Maintenance building has like one section of the wall that's like pulling away from the connecting wall, and water is getting in, so that needs to be addressed. Refinishing the gym floors at the 4 elementaries is $160,000. Our buildings have a concrete shed outside of them where flammable materials are kept. So that the cost to redo those doorways, the entrances, is $50,000. And then contingencies where we sometimes ask the board to add 10% or so many percent to our contract. For unforeseen circumstances, we're estimating at $1.7 million. And then the next few years, we're estimating about $1 million in technology. The projects there are going to be prioritized, but there will be more money available for technology in the next series. So projects potentially for 2025 is $9 million. And that's it. So the total identified projects so far are $23.9 million, and we have 34.6 to spend in total.
And so the projects that are displayed here for 2025, we have not made final determinations
Correct.
about, but this is the recommendations that is coming forward from the
From the construction team.
crew. Yeah.
Right.
So next I'll be inviting the technology plan to come up, and so they may show you some numbers that are going to be different than what Robert has planned here in technology. And I want to be clear that what we're talking about is we're just trying to start looking at all of that 2025 work. and help the board and the community understand that we're thinking about how to make sure we do not have any tax increase because we made that commitment to the
Correct.
community. But these are then the decisions that have to be made as we look to go forward. And so the board tonight is going to get lots of information about what we could possibly do as we go forward in the bond. And we're bringing this to you so that you know that there's a lot of thinking and intentionality. And I don't want to get confused when CBD, Communications by Design, and Danny come up and show you a technology plan where they're going to recommend that we move some other items to the front first. So we will have some decisions to make about how we spend this remaining project pull out to keep the zero mills stable for the community.
Yep.
So I'm going to just pause to let the board ask some questions
Sure.
of you, if they have them, about where we're at with our spending so far in the bond and other feedback.
Any questions?
I just have one. Were you going first?
No,
Go ahead. You mentioned the parking lots, but my question for the parking lots, was any of the entryways identified as maybe coming up under reconstruction or redesign?
Yeah.
Because of the oldness of the entryway?
Right, so, on the side of, Forest Park, on the east side of the street, there wasn't enough time to get it done this summer. The city had a lot of stuff on their plate as far as like approvals go, and our construction team didn't think with just that limited amount of time that we have over the summer that they could add that drop-off lane. So it would actually cut into our property, you know, the width of a car length, or a car width, so the kids can be dropped off and then exiting that lane.
Yeah, because you can get in there, but you can't, it takes you a little, you have to be creative to get out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that'll be an additional drop-off lane. We also have something like that for the Early Learning Center, but that's on hold for now. A drop-off lane there also to alleviate some of that traffic until we decide where that location or where that program would be located in the future.
Thank you, I just wanted to know where they are identified.
Yeah, and then the Crescentwood
Yeah.
property, it's a very narrow entrance, if you guys recall. So the plan is for like a service road going north of the school to the, I think it's Flocks maybe, or whatever that street is on the north end of our property, that you could enter there and then cut through the service drive and into the bus loop area.
Thank you, sir.
Okay?
mine is, the list that you have, is that in priority, or is it just the things that's
Well,
being done?
we think the top two items were the air conditioning. That's what we believe is a top priority. So we definitely want to get that done, and then we'll see how much money is left over after those things are bid out. Because these are prices from when Partners in Architecture did their assessment a couple years ago. So these prices are going to be, they're going to be different.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the bids come in at, and then we can determine, you know, how much more there is to spend.
So do you think that is enough contingency to cover? 'Cause I know you usually add a 15%.
I think we've been adding 10, I think,
10?
for a couple projects that we've had it, yeah. Well, you know, I don't know what the cost is going to come in on the bids. But, you know, we'll have some options if it's more. You know, I can come back with some suggestions at that time, but I would think it's going to be within that amount of money that we have allocated. You know,
'Cause I
the
think
$5 million, I should say, that's left over.
That pointing and stuff for the bricks is really important, but them drains will heal.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Thank you.
okay.
How much consideration has gone into the possible increase in cost of materials, because it seems to be steadily rising every year?
Right, so the architect bumped it up a little bit from that assessment. I don't know what cost percentage he used. That's why we don't know our final numbers until we actually bid it out. And that'll be this fall.
Great, thank
All
you,
right,
Mr.
you're
Carla.
welcome.
So I'd like to welcome up Danny Latham and Matt Tarot. Danny is a district employee in technology and safety here in the district. And Matt is a representative from Communications by Design. And they are going to take us through a 10-year technology plan and share with the board and the community their recommendations for how East Point stays viable in security and phones and access.
Good
Mr.
evening,
Latham.
good evening, board and audience. This is Matt Taro from Communications by Design, Justin Monnet. We approach this with a view of what are we going to utilize bond funding for, and what can we plan for in the future, instead of just going and saying, okay, this year we need to replace our servers. Let's actually get it on a plan, get it on a radar, so that we can budget for it in years to come. So we've spent quite a bit of time over the last few months going through the different systems in the district, whether they be technology or school safety items. And we've come up with what we believe to be a pretty solid 10-year plan. And Matt here is going to go through the presentation and explain a little bit to us.
Thanks, Danny. Good evening, everyone. Wanted to preface kind of what Danny's saying here with, we put together a plan that is as tentative as possible. There's a lot of time in 10 years that things can change. We took a look at the different systems that are in place today that fall in the technology category and attempted to put a dollar amount associated with replacing those with what's currently there, as well as improving them. And I'll be able to show you that here in a moment. We'll go to the next slide here. What we did is we took a look at different systems throughout the district. I'm going to use the top line as an example here, and I'll go through kind of what we're looking at here. We use the server, SAN, and related components category for a moment. We took a look at when that work was last done. For this particular category, that was done in 2020. Based on our experience and the approximate lifespan of this equipment, we're expecting that it will last approximately 6 years, giving us till approximately 2026 to need to replace that. Taking a look at what equipment's there and what we expect the budget to be for that particular project in 2026, we put together a dollar amount associated with that, as well as potential funding sources that can fund that work. In this particular example, you have bond funding, as well as a part of that is E-rate eligible. We did this for multiple systems that exist currently in East Point, and what we looked to do was modernize some of these systems, take a look at some of them and see if they are in need of desperate repair, which some of them are. You'll see some of these items say they're past due. That just means that we're past the approximate lifespan and the useful life of what this equipment is. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't continue to function. It just may not be at its peak performance. It's like pushing a car past its lifespan. You may be able to get where you're going, but you may have some breakdowns and some struggles along the way. So we did this for multiple systems throughout the district. For example, our network switches are in a similar position. They were replaced in 2021. Those are approximately going to last right around 8 years, and we're expecting to need to replace those in 2030. There are some of these systems on this list that are more crucial than others. For example, the wireless, your Wi-Fi access points. Those exist in classrooms throughout the district as well as other places, and that's really the way students connect to the internet in your buildings. And that's something that is past due. It's something we need to address, and that's when we go to the next couple slides, I'll get into that a little more. But I just wanted to give you guys a picture of what the different systems are in the district, as well as what they would take to forklift those throughout the next few years. You can go on to the next slide. This is just continuing that work. You've got classroom equipment here at the top few items here. It's your classroom audio, video, your panels that are on the wall, as well as your microphone that may be needed for a teacher, and a document camera to show a document off to a student. And you've got other systems throughout the buildings. On the next slide, what we did is we took these different systems and looked to phase them out into a schedule. So we put together a 10-year schedule. I'm sorry, it's actually one more slide. For when those projects would need to be done. Now, this is a draft. Things can change over 10 years. This is giving you the best case scenario with what we think are the highest priority projects. The first year in fiscal year 2025, what we are recommending is that we address the wireless access points, that Wi-Fi that I discussed. Also, the external fiber. That is how your district buildings communicate to the internet. It's how they are linked together. It's how they get internet from their internet service provider. And that fiber optic backbone is something that's in need of repair, and really it's in need of discovery. We need to fully map that out and understand what is there and where all those lines are going, and have a better maintenance plan moving forward. So this is an initial step to really address that. And then as we go on, we'll need to do that throughout the length of that 10-year. You'll see that some of these items repeat in this 10-year plan. Some of these items don't have a lifespan of 10 years. So we will have to address it in the beginning and potentially again at the end. And if we extended this out longer, obviously, you would have that repeating action happen more often. The other thing that we'd like to address in 2025 is the video monitoring or the video surveillance, your cameras throughout the buildings. Those are something that is a hodgepodge or a mixed bag of what exists today. And we've got some analog cameras that are past their useful life. And we do have some mixed in digital cameras as well. Any work that's been done semi-recently has been done the right way. However, there's just some existing equipment that does need to be addressed. And that sums up the total of what we are expecting to be the 2025 projects. We've done the same thing for 2026 and 27 and moving on for the next 10 years. And this is all, like I said, based on what the useful life is of this equipment and trying to make some compromises to prioritize some projects as well. There are things on here that realistically need to be addressed sooner than what they are. However, there's only so much funding available for a given year. There's only so many resources available to address certain projects. So that's why they are spaced out a little bit here. You'll notice the first year we're trying to attack the main points that the technology team does feel is the highest priority. This gives you a picture for what we expect to need over the next 10 years. That's a long time to really look at this, so it's pretty drawn out here. Over the next 10 years, what you're seeing here is an approximate $15 million in technology funding that would be required to maintain and sustain the systems that are in place today. We're not looking at adding systems. This is really just taking what you guys have today and modernizing some of it, making it up to speed with where it should be. But realistically, we're looking at maintaining that over the next 10 years. It's a lot of information. I want to pause and make sure we don't have any questions before I move on.
So,
I see in the bottom corner,
Yes,
bottom right-hand corner,
yes,
15 million,
yes,
and that's spread out over 10 years?
correct.
Now, my question is when you receive bond money from the public,
Yep.
okay, in some ways, to me, that's kind of like one-time money,
Sure.
because it does run out. It's not a constant funding stream, and you have to go back and ask for another bond. Now, my question is if this is 15 million over 10 years, is this something that you should spend bond money on it, or is this something where we should budget for 1.5 million a year? You understand what I'm saying?
That's more the
Because
recommendation
going
we're
forward,
making,
I'm
yes.
saying in year 11.
Yep,
Now, because in year 11, we're going to need something, year 12, we're going to need something.
absolutely.
Isn't this something that we should have, I don't know, Robert, that it's actually part of our annual budget as far as maintenance of our, I don't know what you want to say, all our various technological
Systems, yeah.
systems or whatever? Because we don't have anything in there kind of.
I think there's a couple different schools of thought on that. If you're spending general fund money on it, there's less money available for raises and other materials, curriculum, that type of thing for the classroom. You can put it in a bond. A lot of districts, they like to keep that millage rate the same, so as soon as that rate would creep down, they go out and issue more bonds, so that way they're continuing to make improvements in their district, updating in technology. Or you can have a technology millage, similar to what we have for a sinking fund, where you have like a tax revenue coming each year, and you set that aside for technology improvements.
But you would suggest, I'm just wondering, is it best to build it into our budget based upon the funding we get from the state? Or should we take the strategy of trying to
I think we
get
need to-
bonds and things like that to fund it? What do most other districts do?
It's mixed. For us, I think we need to keep a healthy fund balance in excess of the minimum that's required by board policy. And then from there, make sure we have money set aside for future raises, and just to make our programs, make our district competitive, and then to use bond or technology millage for significant big projects in the technology plan.
So primarily, these days, districts are leaning more towards hard goods, I guess you could say, technology, facilities, things like that, they're mostly funding that with bonds.
Correct.
And then when you get your normal state appropriations based upon your FTEs and all that kind of stuff, that money is primarily used for personnel.
Correct.
And that seems to be the way to go. I don't know, I just want to make that clear because, you know, I mean, if we do have to go out for bonds in the future, people need to understand that this is something that, you know, is kind of standard practice in most school districts, that they're using the bonds to fund their facilities and technology improvements and maintenance and stuff like
I
that.
want to make sure that I reflect what Robert said. There's a few different funding modalities.
Right.
Some districts will set aside money. There's a hybrid funding where you use a little bit of E-rate, a little bit of bond, a little bit of general fund that happens. So that there isn't one singular formula, but that's why we wanted to get this in front of the board, because we want to help the district over the long run be able to maintain and improve its technology. And we wanted the board to see the investment that would have to be made over the course of 10 years to do that.
To me, I see this as a necessary expense in some ways.
Right.
You know, we have to maintain and we have to continually try to make some improvements over time to keep up with, you know, the technological improvements and changes going on, right?
Correct.
So that's why,
And
I
I don't think
always
we'll
wanted-
ever
you
be able
understand
to
what I'm
keep up
saying?
with all of them.
that's what I'm saying. So
We are
it's
not
like it's gonna
anticipating
annually, yeah.
new technologies coming out, and there is a guarantee that new
Oh, yeah.
and disruptive technologies will
Within
completely
that 10
change
years,
this
probably.
whole, will completely change the whole
And-
Within the
plan.
10 years, probably.
Yeah, and that was part of my question. If we spoke in terms of phases, over the phasing period, what would that touch, and how many facilities would that touch? And would that take us out of the ballpark of state-of-the-art equipment?
If I understand your question, where you're going with that is, we wouldn't want to install something that's already
Right, and we don't want a
outdated.
bunch of Band-Aids out.
Understood. Yeah, this is looking at modernizing the systems today. So the way that this is structured is, what would it take to do this today? Now, there is a little bit there's an inflation rate built into this formula, but we can't predict the future. We do not know what's going to happen with some of these systems. And when it is 2030 and we're going to address our network switches again, we will not just necessarily reproduce what we did that was done in 2021. We wouldn't necessarily just reproduce that same system. It would be thought out based on where we're at in that particular cycle. So the way this is structured is, yes, to take a look at what would it cost to do this today. However, that does not mean that we would install out-of-date equipment. This is really designed to try to get you the best modern system possible for each individual category.
Yeah, yeah. And the B part of that, I see you. The B part of that would be, you mentioned that we had equipment, we'll have to replace equipment in 2026. So you had older equipment in 2020?
Yes, that was the server SAN equipment that would need to be done in 2026. That was done in 2020.
Okay.
Has approximate lifespan of 6 years.
And correct me, we spent money, those were computers. I answered my own question. That's my own question. I'm good.
I have two questions.
Absolutely.
One, what is E-rate?
E-rate dollars are categorical dollars that can be funded on a pure pupil basis that can fund a multitude of different systems. From a technology side, which is where my specialty is, we would look at using E-rate dollars that are allocated to offset the cost of certain projects. Those are state dollars that the state awards to a district, and the district pays a percentage of that. For example, I believe, if I'm correct, the rate is 85-15. So the district would be responsible for 15% of the funds, and 85% would fall on the state's E-rate funding. So, yes, so, and now.
And then my other thing would be, I guess would be more to Robert, taking some from the general fund, I think is not a good idea, in my opinion. I agree that we don't take anything, because we need to give our teachers as much as we can give them. And so if we go out for a technology bond, is it a technology bond is what it's called? How can we do that without raising the taxes if we do it? Or is that possible to do that?
You know, it's possible. It depends what we decide to do, like going forward with that middle school and high school. I mean, we just can't look at technology by itself. We have to look at it in conjunction with the
Everything
other
else.
initiatives that we have in the district.
Because that's what I'm thinking, like,
Yeah.
if we do something, when we're gonna do something to the 6th grade, 8th grade,
Yeah.
in high school, that's gonna affect all of this.
Yeah.
And depending on the direction that we take with the high school, that will free up, it will be money available possibly in this bond as well, depending on how we do it.
Right.
Because there was bond planning at both the middle school campus and the high school campus. And if we decide to reduce our footprint on the high school, our costs will begin to decrease as well. We're paying for a very large building right now.
And then, like, though, I mean, I totally agree with the Wi-Fi portion, because if we does not have a strong fiber and Wi-Fi system, we're not gonna be able to do anything. Like, I don't know how much the average Wi-Fi, whatever, costs, but I know that we need to make sure that's strong, because that's how we communicate all the way, all the time. Everything is going via Wi-Fi, fiber, whatever that is.
I had a question regarding projections for student population. If we're looking at a 10-year plan, from where we are right now with student enrollment, has anybody considered or calculated a projected number of enrollment as far as what facilities will be used or disused within this 10 years?
So the work has been planned out based on our current trajectory of continuing to have 4 elementary schools. Right now, the work has been part and parceled out with a standalone middle school and a standalone high school. It has not been readjusted based on the board taking direction in June for a unified campus. And then we still have a lot of conversations to have over the course of this year about where that campus will be, how we will fund it. And so those pieces have not. We do have increasing student enrollment numbers now in our elementary schools. Those numbers have not been utilized in this forecasting of the plan. But what we're able to get to is we're able to now clearly see when we should be investing. The numbers will change, as Justin said, because the rates will change, technologies will change. What we're trying to do is get a good floor plan that is a start, so that either ourselves or our predecessors can continue to keep the district moving forward, and that the board knows that we need to intentionally plan for these items. There will always be variables that we have not considered at the beginning of a 10-year plan. If you wanted to elaborate more on that. I don't know how you've done that with other districts, Justin.
So what we've done in other districts is we've taken a look at different systems that we've seen improve or change over the past few years, and we've used that experience to gauge when we expect things to happen. There are certain things that are somewhat predictable. I don't want to say are extremely predictable, but I'll use an example of paging, for example. That's a system that is right now scheduled to be replaced in 2028. We've seen that particular category drastically improving and changing the way it's done from an analog type of environment over to a IP-based or category cabling-based system. That's something that we've seen happen with other systems such as phones, and it's a similar experience. So we've taken experience that we've had in other categories and applied them if we see the market going in that direction. However, we can't necessarily predict everything. We could be wrong about certain things, but we're doing our best to our due diligence to really thoughtfully plan out when these systems need to be replaced and what we expect the market to look like at that point when it comes to these different systems. We do have a couple more slides. We did break the things down by building, just to give you a picture for what it would look like if we were to address things on a per building basis, if it did make sense. We broke them in, actually, let me correct myself, not quite by building category. We didn't break the elementaries out into individual elementaries. We did group those together for you. But we did take these different systems, and where applicable, we broke it out by a building category basis. For example, the server SAN there, you'll see that doesn't have anything broken down. That's a district-wide item. It's not something we can really break down on a per-building basis. But following that, we have our network switches. We did break down how that $320,000 spreads across the district, taking a look at where the current switch deployment is. And this is just to give you guys a better picture for where that investment would really need to go if we are to do that project, what buildings would be touched and what that would look like in the future. Following the next couple slides is going to be the same thing for different systems. It's a lot of information. I don't necessarily want to go through all of that with you guys, but I want you guys to have it and have it in front of you to be able to reference at a later date. We can keep going. I think there's 3 more of these. Same thing. We've broken down the different systems by building. And another slide here would be more systems broken down. That's the last one. We've broken down even more categories by building. So and then following that, one thing we also wanted to talk about is, you guys mentioned if we are funding something in a bond or not. Some of this work was already done. This is done before our involvement. When the bond was planned in 2023, there were technology items that were included in that bond. And what we did is the next couple slides are showing you what was actually planned for as part of the bond. Now, there are systems that were on our list that were not planned to be addressed as part of the bond. And that's normal. There's a lot of systems in a district and not all of them will be bond funded. But this just gives you an idea about what was planned for throughout your buildings. So for example, I'll use Crescentwood for an example, and they're kind of cut and paste here. There are similar experiences at all your buildings. But as part of the bond, they did plan to replace the gym sound systems, to upgrade your network infrastructure, which translates to things like Wi-Fi, cabling throughout the building that relates to construction. It can also partially fall into that fiber optic cabling category. You also have some safety and security dollars to upgrade your cameras at individual buildings. And then we also have an emergency communication system, and specifically with clocks is an item that you're seeing there. Clocks are an item that is translating into doing a little more than just showing time nowadays. They are actually signage in a lot of areas and serve as a emergency communication tool. And then that breaks down into multiple buildings. You guys can kind of see what that looks like. And at the end of this, there's one more slide here that totals up to the total technology dollar amount. Just one more slide, please. Of $6.516 million as budgeted as part of the bond. You'll also see we have an E-rate funding category that shows you what the current E-rate eligible dollar amount is. We've added that total to give you a full technology picture for what's available from a funding perspective. And then we also have projections in there that are not calculated in because we don't know what the exact E-rate dollars will be. But we are expecting to find that out in the next couple months, what we'll be seeing for the next E-rate cycle.
Up to this bond, E-rate has been one of the major, up until the bond, E-rate has been one of our major funding sources for district technology, which gets us that 8515 as far as cost goes. I mean, like our previous switches, our previous servers, that was all done through the E-rate program.
I have a question as far as, if we were to, like, say, for instance, we know the direction we're going in with the 4 elementaries, okay? And if we said, okay, well, we want to go ahead and start to use some of the bond money for the technological improvements,
Yep.
okay? We're not sure where we're going 612 yet, but we know where we're going with the elementaries. When we decide where we're going 612, will we be able to seamlessly integrate that with anything we had going on now?
It's a
Understand
tricky,
what I'm saying?
yes, that's a tricky answer. It really depends
Because,
on
I
the
mean,
system.
will some of this end up being, if we don't decide for a couple, 3 years, will some of this end up being outdated and we can't integrate this in with that? I mean,
So
you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Because, I mean, we know the direction on our 4 elementaries for sure
Yep.
right now. We're not sure on 612.
I can't answer that question on a general basis. For specific systems, yes, it would be easy to seamlessly integrate whatever we've done today, we could move that equipment from one location to another. That's not true of all systems. There is work that would take place that would potentially be funding that you would have to re-spend if you were to change the current building layouts. That doesn't mean that it's not necessary to do certain things. There are some things that are unavoidable and you need to address them district-wide. However, there are projects that we've taken a look at and tried to push those back a little bit to give you some time to make those decisions. The 3 projects that are planned for 2025 being your fiber optic network, your Wi-Fi, and your camera work, the majority of that would be, I'm going to use the word salvageable. You could move it. You could, thank you, that's a better word. Transferable, thank you, Justin. Transferable to another location. Yes. The software, the cost is including software? Yes. All the items are what we would call a burdened item. It may include cable, it may include software, it may include things like that. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Matt and Justin and Danny for the time. Are you asking to do that this evening? So, if you could ask board president. And that concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is hearing of the public. Does anyone wish to be heard? Does anyone wish to be heard? Okay, you need to state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Coach Michael Raley, special education teacher at the high school and former varsity basketball coach at the high school. I came here to inform you what you already know, and that is that the person that sits next to you, Christina Gibson, is racist, inept, and corrupt, and runs this district like her own personal crime family. I'm sure you're aware that she has 3 discrimination suits against her presently, and I will be batting cleanup because I will be filing the 4th. The EEOC will be coming in here. In addition to her hiring people in the district, administrators who succumb to her coercion, what they do is they use evaluations and weaponize them for the people she wants to get rid of for her own personal discrimination purposes, or people that she does not like. Also, I would like you to know that she puts this district in danger physically. She has engaged in an illicit affair with the former athletic director, Mr. Russell Ball, who quickly decided to leave and resign because their affair was discovered by his wife. There are present employees who are aware of this fact. And because of the heavy-handed bullying manner that Miss Christina Gibson runs this district, they are afraid to inform you of that. Now, I personally have informed you through email of some of the issues that I have had with Miss Christina Gibson, but I was not responded to. So that's why I'm here today, so you can see me in person, and it can be documented by the cameras.
Sir,
Yes.
your time's up.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for that information. But lastly, I would like you to understand that, say that Mr. Ball's wife was not all the way mentally stable. She was already,
Sir?
yes, I get it, but she was
Your time's up.
already irrational enough to come confront Christina Gibson about the affair, and she confronted another teacher who thought she was
You're done.
having the affair.
You're done, please, okay?
So what's to say if she did not come up there and decide to shoot Christina Gibson, or other employees, or other students? She is reckless, she is racist, she is corrupt, and she is inept.
Does anyone else wish to be heard? Does anyone else wish to be heard?
Hi, I'm Janet Beiersdorf Huffnagel, a proud community member and teacher at the high school. It's a tough act to follow, but I wanted to come to say a couple of good things that are happening at the high school. So we have gotten off to a pretty good start. Yeah, I'm teaching all ninth grade this year, and the ninth graders have been awesome, which makes me feel really hopeful for our future at the high school. And the other thing that's making me feel really hopeful at the moment that I just wanted to come and share with you all is that we have some staffing gaps still, but we hired some really great young educators over the summer, and I'm really excited about them. Allie Taylor is our 10th grade English teacher. She's bringing back our drama program. Today she was holding tryouts for a talent show already. It's so exciting to have that program back. Jacqueline Davis is our Spanish teacher, and she actually speaks Spanish. I taught Spanish last year. I don't speak Spanish. So it's really exciting, and I just wanted to share some of those good things with you. Thanks.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone else wish to be heard? We'll close the hearing in the public at 7:25. Next, discussion action, human resources. For us tonight, we have a slate of instructional new hires. I would move the board approve the instructional new hires as presented.
Support. Support.
Questions, comments? Please call the vote.
I have a question. Are the ones that are on this list here is additional to the list that we had last time?
Oh, yeah,
This is not the same people, this
No.
is additional.
yes.
I have a comment to make. Just in looking at comparing some of the lists, are we replacing people as often as it seemed, or is there a problem with a revolving door? And if that's the case, what can we do about that?
Julie, would you like to take that question?
We are replacing people. We have a lot of new teachers that are excited about being, working with our kids. So we've been bringing in new talent.
We also employed a high number of special education teachers last year through a third-party contract. So this is a pretty normal time to have a high preponderance of hiring. We had a lot of unfilled social work positions last year as well. We're finding that we have a larger and more talented candidate pool. And then we're happy to add Mr. Prude to the mix. He has been our school resource officer and has agreed to take on a section of CTE. So I'd be happy to share more with the board about the new hires that we would love to welcome here this evening.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Grunberg,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Ms. Richardson,
Yes.
Ms. Rayford,
No.
Dr. Early, yes.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if everybody's aware, unfortunately, there was a car accident where we lost a staff member this past week. And I'd like us all to take a moment right now. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.